Hey everybody, this is Michael.
This is Rick.
And this is Mario.
The chef cooked for you the special, the dancers will kick your tongue out, and your credit is good. Let's get it on. Alright, so last time we were kind of opening the door talking about San Antonio and its current one-sport team, the San Antonio Spurs, and we talked about the idea of, you know, we've been hitting these themes of San Antonio as a city, and can it grow? Are we at its plateau point? Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of looking at the idea of, are we stuck where we are for the foreseeable future as one professional sports team? Could we get professional football? Could we get professional baseball? And if we're only talking about the three majors as the three wise men of sports, so to speak, then we really couldn't count, you know, club sports or arena football or the what's the soccer league, Rick, that we've had before?
We get the Scorpions. I don't know what their actual league is called, but it's like a minor league.
But there isn't really like whatever the LA Galaxy play.
Like the MLS.
That's MLS. That's pro soccer. That's as pro as it gets beyond
in America.
Olympics, right?
In America, yeah.
So I guess that's kind of the thing that's been something on my mind is, you know, this is such a feverish sports town, but the tradition has been that if you live in San Antonio, and I guess we'll start with football, is if you live in San Antonio, you're a de facto Cowboys fan, which is the majority here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So even if, let's say, you know, a billionaire investor or a group of guys were able to get the NFL owners and Roger Goodell to say, hey, let's get a team in San Antonio, the question is, where would we put them? What would be a good mascot name? Could we get the business support to fill luxury suites? Would we get the fan support to fill, I would say, a minimum stadium of like 60,000 people, kind of like the Indianapolis Colts? Like, that's kind of what we'd be looking at. We wouldn't build, you know, 100,000 plus stadium like Dallas or anything like that. But also, would we have to name a city of San Antonio's football team as like the Austin, San Antonio, whatever, to get the Austin business conglomerates to join in? Or could we do it ourselves? Can this city field a team? You know, because you're talking about season tickets, you're talking about business investments. You know, the luxury suite thing is a humongous part of revenue for sports teams. So that's kind of something I'm just wondering, you know, is it something that even interests you guys? Is that something that you could ever see happening here? What are the things that would have to fall in line for that to be a remote possibility? Do you want that? Do you want that here?
I think just as a San Antonian, I kind of do. I mean, just the idea that we're always trying to compete with other cities and fall short every single time. I mean, everybody always says, keep San Antonio lame, you know, keep Austin weird or whatever. You know, we get the screwy end of it, and, you know, I would like to see that. I mean, and I'm not really a sports guy either, so, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go, per se, but I'd be excited that there would be something, and that I might actually change my involvement.
And I really think, too, you know, football is it's that universal sport. Now, you know, you guys know I'm a basketball guy first. That's my favorite sport. Mm-hmm. But I like football from the point of view of I genuinely enjoy the sport in general. But it's also, unlike basketball, I can watch basketball completely by myself at night, whether it's a Spurs game or college basketball or anything like that, and completely enjoy it. Whereas football always feels like a social event. It feels like, you know, nobody ever watches the Super Bowl alone. It's always either you're hosting a Super Bowl party or you're going to a Super Bowl party. Right. And I think having a team in your own city lends itself to that thing every Sunday where the football season's only 16 games. And so you're basically talking about, even as season ticket holders, you know, if all of us said, well, let's all get a block of tickets together, that's 8 games, and it's usually going to be on Sundays, maybe a Saturday, maybe a Thursday. Those are rare in between, but you're talking about all the tailgating fun and all the things that go into that for a very minimal amount because there's so many seats. The seats aren't priced the way they are for other sports. So, you know, you could get something pretty decent for, I'm assuming, $75 or $100 a game, and that's like $800 to $1,000 for one person, $2,000 if you're doing it up as a couple, and then saying, this is kind of our commitment to do something together as friends, as family. I feel like that's something San Antonio is very big on, is the family part of it, the tradition, the culture, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I'm trying to see what we're missing as a city besides, you know, the market share and all that TV stuff that people always talk about. San Antonio is a small market. I know all that, but...
Yeah. I think the thing that comes up, and not that I necessarily agree, but I think the thing that always comes up is, you know, when you're talking about San Antonio, at least the kind of metropolitan area, is that, you know, the median income for families is significantly lower than a lot of the other markets. So that's kind of the issue when, if I'm not mistaken, you can go to like a Spurs game or like a Rampage game. You can pay like $15 or something for a ticket. Whereas, like in my experience, like going to like Texans games and stuff. I mean the absolute dead last nosebleed seat face value is like I think $56 for one person, and then if you end up going through StubHub or something like that, you're talking $90. That's more realistic, $90 a person. So I think that's something that kind of plays into it because again, it's the same thing now. If I was if I had kids and stuff and I had 3 or 4 kids, I would love to take them to football games. I would love to take the whole family. But I mean, right there, you're talking about $300 or $400 a pop. Mm-hmm. Now if I could afford it, and I'm the type of person that I would find a way to afford it. I'd like, well, you're not getting new shoes because Dad wants season tickets.
That's right. That's right.
Or whatever. But I think that's part of it. That's a big part of it, unfortunately, and that's something you hear over and over again, which is crappy because it's unfair. It's unfair that that's kind of like the thing the label that we're stuck with. But again, because like you said, you have to look to it like the business interests here, and I think now, especially if you look at, and granted, it's something that's only probably projected for the next 15 to 20 years, but you look at all like the natural gas and oil field stuff that's going on, and like the Eagle Ford Shale and all this, you do have a really big influx of companies now. I mean, you have Halliburton, you have Schlumberger or whatever. You have all these companies that are coming in from up north and from out of state that are dumping tons and tons of money into the local economies of not just San Antonio area, but like, obviously further south, even towards the border. Mm-hmm. So I think it maybe in the next couple of years is probably the time to strike, because you do have these big corporations that are dumping tons of money into the infrastructure, hopefully, of some of these smaller areas and bringing people from out of state to work here and to live here, and hopefully they'll settle here. So maybe the window's there. I don't know.
I feel like it's something that isn't completely out of the realm of possibility, because here's some things I notice in our city. I notice that the malls, North Star, La Cantera, Rolling Oaks, wherever, it doesn't matter what time of day it is, even during the holiday season, you don't see a shortage of cars and a shortage of spending and a shortage of long lines and people walking around with bags. Now, granted, we do have a percentage of people that aren't from the city or even out of the country. It's not an uncommon thing to see, a lot of Mexico license plates and stuff like that, and of course they bring in their money. But you see a lot of people just from the valley that make it up here just for regular Saturday shopping. So something tells me, even if we had, and I say football first because you were mentioning money per game. So let's talk about the 3 majors. An NBA season is 82 games, so that's 41 home games for each city. Major League Baseball is 162 games, so that's 81 home games. And then football, 16 games, that's 8 home games. And then, of course, a couple of preseason games. I think 2 preseason for football, something like 4 or 5 for basketball, and probably something like that for baseball. So, yeah, you're going to pay more per seat because you only get 8 shots a year to go to your home team's games. Not talking about playoffs and stuff like that. So I know it's going to be a hotter commodity, but that's what makes it more special. Now, again, like I said, me being a basketball and an NBA fan first doesn't take away from my acknowledgement of the fact that football would be an easier draw. I've never been a season ticket holder for the Spurs ever. And I wish I could. I wish just once in my life I could have done it during the Duncan era. I really would love to have said, just for one season, I was just totally immersed in Spurs basketball, and every couple of nights I was there for a home game. We typically I get to go to maybe anywhere between 1 to 5 games max a season, and then rarely I get to go to a playoff game because I end up watching them at home and stuff like that. So as feverish as I am for it, and I bleed silver and black, I am not able to be there every night. But with football, it's like, it feels like it'd be my team, so that's automatic home love. Mm-hmm. So I would already be there. I wouldn't be watching those games on TV. And then, of course, I know you get blacked out anyway if you don't sell out. But to me, it seems like a no-brainer. And you brought up, Rick, a really great point about the fact that you'd find a way. I feel like I brought up the way the malls are always filled up and people are always spending, because I feel like people would find a way. If we built a small enough stadium that's not requiring these giant sellouts, and it's a modest stadium, because obviously the Alamo Dome is not a feasible facility, but I feel like our city would be able to field that as well as all the surrounding areas. I feel like San Marcos would drive down. Maybe even some Austin would drive down. Some valley cities would drive up, because it's only 8 times a year, and it shouldn't be that difficult to put that together.
And we've talked about that in the past. I think I actually probably on a drive to Austin, you and I had a long talk about that, about an ideal place for a stadium, for example. And we talked about like New Braunfels.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of that middle ground right around. I mean, you figure where you live, like in Schertz, like between Schertz is closer to New Braunfels than it is almost... than going downtown.
Yeah.
That's 17 miles the other way, whereas you're probably like 5 miles or 10 miles to New Braunfels.
Pretty much.
And it's the same thing coming the other way from San Marcos, and then, whatever, 40 miles further from Austin. So I think you're right. You're definitely going to get those people, and as long as, you're able to smartly handle that and market that early on to all those groups of people, because you're opening yourself up, again, to, plenty of private businesses and corporations, and then of course you have your Austin, all your computer, mini Silicon Valley type corporations. Stuff like that.
So a couple of branching threads off of this is one of the things that hurts us, and I'm not even talking about the realities of dealing with ownership groups of the NFL opening up an expansion or anything like that, but San Antonio for the most part is 85% Cowboy City, 10% Texans, and 5% other. Is that a pretty accurate statement?
I think so.
For people that are football fans, this is Cowboys country for whatever reason. It's something I really don't understand where that came
smart
from.
Marketing.
It is, right? And that's why Jerry Jones every so often brings the team to practice here. Everyone feels an attachment to them. Would we have to wait a few generations if we got a team to see our own fans that are Cowboy people? What I'm saying is, with those diehard Cowboy fans, would they instantly take off their Romo jersey and throw on the whatever our new team is jersey, or do both? Or would they say, well, no, man, I'm not going to be a San Antonio fan. My team is Dallas. That's my team. I bleed the Cowboy silver, the blue star or whatever is.
I don't want to say the majority, but I think you'd have a lot of people that would immediately defect. Because there's people that and I get it. I mean, I've never been as an adult, as a football watching adult, even in high school, a Cowboys fan per se. Of course, when I was a kid, I liked Herschel Walker and Danny White and all these guys, but I liked anybody I saw on TV, whatever that looked cool. But I think obviously you have some people that's the team because that's the team they had for so long. Their parents or their grandparents, it's kind of ingrained and built into their culture of their families and stuff. That's the team that you root for. But at the same time, I think it's hard to deny that if San Antonio is suddenly an NFL team, I can't imagine someone who loves the Cowboys be like, well, I'm not going to, F San Antonio because I still love the Cowboys. Now, the thing that I think you have to do, and of course this is something that I'm sure Dallas fights against, is that, Dallas and Houston, for example, are in different conferences.
Right.
The benefit of that is you can play off, out of conference games, which they don't. They only play each other every 4 years. So the past 10 years, they've played each other whatever that is, 3 or 4 times or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably something that Jerry Jones fights against because he doesn't. What if? I think the Texans only beat him the first time they ever played him, and that was it. But what if suddenly now every time they played them twice a year or once a year, they beat them? So suddenly you're in Jerry World getting your ass handed to you by the Texans in front of 100,000 people. There's people that are gonna be like, oh, okay, well, I don't like them that much. I'd rather, because, and I hear this from a lot of Cowboys fans, people that are diehard Cowboys fans are like, oh, I hate Romo, or I hate Jerry Jones, and I hate, how do you hate all the people that play for your team? You can't just say, I love the organization. I'm like, well, no, Jerry Jones is the organization. So you can't separate those things and say, well, I hate Jason Garrett, and I hate Tony Romo, and I hate Jerry Jones. Oh, but I love the Cowboys. As far as you're concerned in the scope of your reality, that is the Cowboys.
Right.
You know what I mean? That'd be like if I was like, oh, I hate Bob McNair, and I hate J.J. Watt, and I hate Brian Cushing. Oh, but I love the Texans.
Right.
Those guys are the Texans. You know what I mean? I'd be kind of backwards if I tried to argue against that. So
that's, I think, too, a lot of that is the lethargic fandom of just protecting their hearts because they know every year they're going to lead to heartache, knowing that as long as the back of the jersey says Romo, as long as the owner says Jones, and as long as the head coach hat says Garrett, that's a trifecta of non-winning combinations. Yeah. I mean, and again, not in a trash-talking way, just it's a proven thing, right? That they've had one playoff victory in 17 years or something. I don't know the specific statistics.
It's
It's something pretty bad, right? But
Yeah.
the point is that all of that money and all that roster bankrolling everything hasn't really, and we already know that in sports, the Moneyball effect can or can't have a positive effect, and the Spurs are the perfected example of, running a franchise in a pro sports situation where the top heavy teams with the higher payrolls are typically given the pre-advantage to making it further in the playoffs and things like that. Doesn't always happen. You have teams like New York that have perennially been terrible, and teams like the Lakers that, despite their payroll, Kobe Bryant goes down with injury and the whole team falls apart.
Yeah.
The thing I guess I'm looking at as a city is, for us, it just, I don't know, I feel like even if there was a billionaire guy, like let's say Mark Zuckerberg was from here and he was like, I've got $28 billion and I'll buy the stadium myself out of my money, no bond elections, no public money, I'll do it myself. Is it really as simple as, them saying, or Jerry Jones saying, well, I don't want San Antonio to, I don't want to lose that fan base, so I'm going to veto it, and he has enough clout with the owners to put a stop to it. Is it that simple?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's money. Like, if you have the money and you're coming in, because normally what you're doing is you're negotiating, obviously, with the NFL itself, with the owners, and then you got to come in and negotiate with the city, right? Because that's where you run into problems, where you say, okay, well, we want to build this stadium and it costs $300 million or whatever, $1 billion,
right,
but we don't want to pay for all of it. We only want to pay for 20% of it. We want you to make up the rest of the difference by adding a 100%, whatever tax hike, which is like what they did with the Alamo Dome back in the day, right? Like make a bond thing for it, and that's when you kind of, you see that with established teams where they run into that and they have to threaten to like move away, or they do move away because they're trying to play that game. So I think, like if in your example, if somebody were to walk in and be like, I've got $100 billion, I'm going to buy this piece of land, I'm going to build the stadium, I'm going to do everything myself, and I'll give you the concessions, San Antonio.
Right.
That would be, it'd be hard to like, I will give you the concessions, I will give you the parking, and I will pay for the rest, and the rest of the money's coming to me. Like, how is that a bad deal for the city?
Right.
Because now suddenly you're on, you're getting the exposure, you're getting TV, you're getting the Riverwalk on national TV every Sunday, and SeaWorld and Fiesta Texas and the missions and all this stuff. That's all that's money, So
I feel like it's possible, and I really realistically think, in 10 years' time, could we see it, assuming it's not a simple thing of someone making a summary decision, the commissioner or a specific owner or a set of owners. I feel like our city really has that potential. And I only mentioned football, not that I have anything against baseball. I just feel like if I'm talking about one of the two, it feels like football is a more realistic possibility because there's a built-in fan base for the sport.
Yeah.
Then there's a built-in fan base for, because we've had a couple of those Rangers games at the Dome, right?
It doesn't seem like
there's not a ton of attendance at those. Yeah. So,
well, that's the thing too, and I say this, and that, like, I'm not a big baseball fan or really big basketball fan either. So that's always a gripe I have, and I know we've talked about this. We have our differing opinions, but like that's the thing. As like a football fan, the way I've always seen it is, you play 16 games, and 8 of them are at home, so there's always an implication, like, because you have your conferences and it's a smaller deal. So there's always implications where every week, generally every game does matter. And it's the truth. And that may be the same for other big sports too, but as a casual viewer, that perception's not there. When I see, like, baseball has 100 and something games, I'm like, and you see, like, oh, so-and-so, they're on a 20-game losing streak. Oh, but they still made the playoffs. I'm like, no, you suck. Like, I don't care how many games you won after that. If anyone loses 20 games in a row, like, you suck. Or you're lazy, or that, the only thing that matters is the playoffs. Let's just get to the playoffs. And the NFL, for example, isn't that way. You can't just coast into the playoffs. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's like every week, especially when you're playing people in your own conference. If you lose a couple of games in your conference, you're pretty much screwed halfway through the season, and you're stuck.
Are you telling me that if the NBA had 20 games in the season, you'd be more apt to watch the games and be a fan of the sport or the Spurs?
I think that's a tiny factor. I'm not saying that's the only thing that keeps me away.
Because my gripe with you specifically, Rick, is that we only get one shot so far. We have one major team, and we're lucky to still have them because they could easily have already been taken away. But I feel like you specifically, being a sports guy and more so being a San Antonio guy who's very much a champion of the heart of the city, and you take pictures of, things all over the town. But our one sport team, where Mario, I can understand it more because he's not really a sports guy, and you are, I feel like you have no real excuse not to be behind them or even watch during the wagon time, which is playoff time, or
but
root
I think that's
for
the thing.
them.
Because I can tell you, like, I've only been to probably a handful of Spurs games, but every single time, I've told you that, every single time I've gone, I've had a great time, and I've enjoyed it, and I got into it, but again, I've never bought my own ticket. I went with Jeff once, and once I went through like a work thing, and I got to sit in like the skybox and the whole bit. So it was the full experience. And I remember like we went one time, me and Carolyn, and we were like, wow, like we can't ever come back because we get to sit in like the sky, like in the box with like free beer and hot wings, and like I don't want to sit down there up at the top for like $50 and like
right.
But whatever. And I always enjoyed it. So I mean, I'm talking about myself too, but that's kind of another question I have is that how do you get? And this is the important thing, because it's not the diehards, right?
Right.
I mean, because like you said yourself, you're a diehard fan, but even for you, it's hard to go to more games than it's possible, right?
Right,
You would love to go to them all. So that's the thing but sports in general, like, they're casual fan sports. Like, there's no sport that requires you to be a hardcore fan. You know what I mean? Like, and especially, like, basketball, especially if you have a team that's consistently good, it's easier to be a casual fan of them. If I just kind of like basketball and the Spurs sucked, what would be my incentive to ever watch them? If I didn't really like basketball and I no interest in it and they suck. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's no like built-in interest, because even if I go to a game, I'm going to go to the game like, oh, I'm just going to go there and get drunk and have a good time and that's it and not give a shit about the game. Well, then why am I there? Yeah. I want to go there and be entertained and feel some competition. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. So that's another question I have is that, again, like you said, we only have one major professional league team, which is the Spurs, but we do have the Scorpions. We do have like the Arena Football Talons. We have the Rampage. We have the Missions. These are all minor league teams that you can watch their games for relatively cheap. You can take your whole family. They have like all these kinds, like the Rampage. Every year I want to go and I never go, but they have the night where you can take your pets.
Right.
And every year, like it just passed recently, and I was busy that day. I think it was Seclovia or something, and you could take your pet that day.
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, dude, I want to take Lincoln.
Cool.
It's like $20, $10 for the dog, $10 for you. You know what I mean? And they have like, you can adopt pets there, and they have like pet stations and all kinds of shit, and that's enticing to me. And if I had, if I wasn't busy that day, I probably would have gone this time. So, but that's the thing is like those things are there too, but I would imagine those things don't sell out either.
Right.
And that's the part of it too. Now, if you were to ask a casual person about, say, hey, like, why don't we go check out the Talons, like, or whatever, someone might say, oh, well, it's not like NFL, so why would I want to see it? I'm not saying that's the prevailing thought or that's what I believe, but that's part of it. Now, if you can't get a casual sports fan to go to a Spurs game, how are you going to get them to go watch the Missions?
No, it's a good point.
You know what I mean?
And that's something you see a lot here, and that's why I never quite understand it, but I would just love to see these type of things galvanize our city a little more. I feel like that would bring, and it's not just about bringing notoriety to the city or making us a bigger market. I could care less about our market share and our TV size. I know it's important. I know that has a lot to do with how much leverage you can put into something like that, but it would just be neat to see something, because a lot of cities' values are measured in their sports teams and stuff like that, where some cities have two, and we've got the one major sports team. So, I don't know, it's just something cool to think about. I really think it's something we could legitimately see in maybe 10 years if they start opening to expansion again and our city's able to promote itself with that kind of financial backing. And real quick, what would you say would be a good mascot team name?
I'm going to go with what we had talked about before.
Texas Republic?
The Texas Republic.
I've always liked that, too.
And we had talked about co-opting the Cobra sign from G.I. Joe and using that as the logo.
Absolutely.
I
love it, too.
I honestly can't think of anything better than that, because it's, it being like it's like a rattler or something.
And, of course,
like
there'd be tons of jokes about seceding and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
exactly. That's fine.
The uniforms could be, because the Spurs are black and white, and I was thinking of something like that where the mascot can have nothing to do with the name, just the way that the coyote has nothing to do with the Spurs, but it's perfect, because when your mascot is the Panthers, then you can't have a cool mascot. You have to have a panther in a suit there.
And
so.
That's an angle I wouldn't mind seeing, because if we go that route and you say we do like black and red, something like that, something kind of
right.
tough, and that is kind of the opposite from like the Cowboys, where ironically the Cowboys aren't a squeaky clean team, but that's the image they have, like that America's team image, and it's like the white and the blue with the star and all that stuff, and it's like that kind of pretty like this, And the Texans are the same way. I mean, the Texans are their image. They're very clean cut, very like kind of straight and narrow kind of team, and us have that team that's kind of like, oh, these guys are kind of like a little rough, like
I love it.
And
I love it.
Kind of build that culture around it that way, and I think people would jump on it.
You heard it here. Texas Republic, somewhere north of San Antonio, between you Braunfels, Cobra type mascot logo. We're going to be working on it, and when we get the team, that's going to be us three. We're going to form the team once this podcast takes off. We're going to use the proceeds to get the NFL
The one thing
here.
I will say real quick, sorry, I know we're wrapping that up, but like, and I wish, again, I'm not a basketball fan, but I wish that the Dallas Mavericks didn't have that name as their team name, because that's more appropriate to San Antonio.
Right.
Because I mean, the name Maverick originates from San Antonio, like from like their Maverick family. They're the ones that actually that name came from.
That's true.
So it'd been more appropriate. Like that would have been a great football name if that wasn't already a basketball team.
Yeah, they could have kept
Everybody
the
hates.
Dallas Chaparrals, and then we could have the Mavericks wide open for
Yeah.
use. No, good call.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know. I'm not a sports guy.
Mario just came back in the room. He's been playing
Welcome
video
back,
games.
Mario.
He's
Thanks.
been on Call of Duty for the past 25 minutes,
Listening to the chat.
killing campers.
All right, guys, we'll be back with you in a minute. We've got a special guest coming in, so we're just going to take a quick break.
All right, guys, welcome back. So I, during the break, took off real quick to the airport, picked up my longtime friend and brother in arms, Johnny, from Denver, just got in. So we officially have our first guest fresh off the plane. Grew up in San Antonio here, went to high school together along with Rick, at least for the first year of high school. So like Rick, I've known this guy 20 plus years or something like that, which is a scary thing. But anyway, Johnny, it's great to have you back for a short visit. And we're glad to have you on as well. So
Thank
welcome.
you very much. This is my first
Welcome.
testing of anything in my life. So welcome.
Fantastic.
We
So
popped your cherry then.
Ew.
You get to clean it up.
That's amazing. So, Johnny and I was talking to him about what we were talking about on the way over, about San Antonio and the sports teams and having more than one team and just the economies of scale of the city. So thought we'd just continue talking about, the stuff we were talking about in pre-show, Rick and Mario and I, about, San Antonio as a urban city, the way we're kind of spread out versus a lot of the big market cities that are, bunched in.
Austin.
And so, yeah. So,
We all know how I feel about Austin at this point, I think.
He'd love it.
I don't.
This
so
audience-
You can tell me.
He wants to move there.
No, I don't want to move
Austin
there.
isn't that big a city. It's the thing.
It's not.
I mean, I when did I leave here? In the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived a lot of major cities coast to coast. And Austin's it's a fun city. It's a great city. Funny enough, it's not that big.
Yeah.
Even
To its benefit, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, I totally agree. Well, and I hear that it's starting to get populated. But even as a TV demographic, I think it's still in the 50s. San Antonio's at 37.
Yeah.
So it's funny like that San Antonio is actually a bigger city.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just spread out far.
167% more populated than Austin.
I think
I looked that up.
What's San Antonio's population? Is it 1.8 or 2.3 million?
No, 1.3. I think.
yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the
Something
view,
like that.
then the TV viewing is about 1.8 with New Braunfels.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think once you
Okay,
throw in the
there you
other
go.
surrounding cities and stuff.
No, San Antonio's a good sized city.
Yeah.
So what problems do you think we face
Well,
compared to
I
other
don't.
places?
I haven't lived here in a long time, so I don't. It's funny. I asked Mike little things like, so what do you guys do like on a Saturday night? Like I have no clue. Like I don't know. Do you guys hang out downtown? I'm a city dweller. Every city I've lived in, I always live smack in the middle of downtown. I like to hang out downtown. I like to party downtown. But I don't like here. That's what I asked. Like, what goes on here? Like, what's like, what is it? 15 years ago, it was Planeta Mexico and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atrium.
The atrium. Good God, scary days. And so now I don't know what's cool.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I think now, to the city's credit, there's a lot of initiatives that are going on right now, with like the SA 2020 stuff and
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that the mayor's doing and stuff. They're really trying to get people back into the urban core and not just live there or work there, but actually participate in the culture of it. And that's the big thing right now. I mean, before, like you said, when we were even in high school, if you came downtown, it's like what we do is like you drive around the loop, downtown or whatever, and that was it. I mean, obviously we weren't going to bars or anything downtown, so it was like you might go to a club or
I used to go to the Bonham in high school.
Yeah, that's what we would do. I think was it Wednesday nights or whatever?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's when we would go there.
That was the
summer.
designated night to find ladies. Was Wednesday night.
And to see every about the local get his fight on there or something.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. I mean, now, that I think that's something that we've always had to kind of fight with growing up here is that, if you didn't live, most of us didn't know anyone that lived downtown. We were talking about that earlier. Like, even whether you lived in the south side or the west side, the north side, it didn't matter because you didn't live downtown. Mm-hmm. So if you went downtown, it was usually because someone was in town visiting that hadn't been to the Alamo or hadn't been to River Center or whatever. True. And you really didn't go there unless it was for school or for something like that. So it was almost like a pain or a chore to go downtown because there wasn't really anything for you to see that you hadn't seen before, at least in our thoughts as kids, being dragged down there. And, even when we lived down there it was back in, 03 or 04, we lived down there for 2.5 years, and it was great. We loved living downtown. But it was the same thing. When I lived there, we lived in a little studio apartment right there on Pecan in St. Mary's. But even then, it was a chore to get our friends to come visit us because it wasn't cool yet.
As your friends, it was a chore to.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, it's hard to park, and it's a long way, and I don't want to drive."
There's no public transportation.
Yeah, and understandably, but. So the only time it was kind of cool to come down is when there was something big happening, like Fiesta stuff, or I know, when the Spurs won stuff, it was a big deal because they went right past our apartment on the river parade thing. But now, obviously, you have your first Friday and first Saturday and first Tuesday and second. Pretty much
I've done one of those nights here somewhere in the back. They are pretty neat. It seems like that blew up.
Yeah, it's it's literally it seems like every night there's something going on somewhere downtown. I was telling Mario I saw on Instagram, but the other night, the McNay, they were doing something outside where they were having craft beer and food and music, and it's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
But it's again, you have to make a concerted effort.
If I had moved back here, I would absolutely have to. I would only feel like I could live downtown. I would have to find that. That would be great. I don't know what else goes on around here, but I think it would be cool.
Yeah.
Well, and like Rich was saying, a lot more stuff is happening. For me, my problem is that the marketing of it all, you don't hear about it until it's either happening or it's done. For me, at least.
No, me too.
So that's where the social media is what's going on these days.
Yeah, but it's instantaneous. Hey guys, tonight is this, and I'm I've already got plans.
But
tonight.
like you mentioned earlier too, it's a part of that is that a lot of that marketing is directed at a specific audience. The people that are probably a couple years out of college, have a job, aren't married, don't have kids. So on the drop of a hat, they're
they can go.
What are we doing tonight?
Yeah, they might work downtown, or they might work in medical center. Hey, let's do something. Oh, there's this thing going on. Cool, let's all get together and go. Whereas, we talked about earlier, guys are mid-30s that have wives and kids and all these kinds of other responsibilities. You can't just do stuff anymore at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit...
Mike and I were talking about that earlier before you got here as well, that it's just the chore of having to leave with a child. Whether leaving with the child or leaving the child with a sitter or something, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And expense, I assume.
I don't like leaving my dog behind, so I completely
that's
serious.
why I don't have a dog.
Yeah, sometimes I'm
really?
I'm leaving the dog's looking at me where are you going? He knows, and I'm like,
I might go away this weekend. No dog.
But yeah, definitely. There is now they're making that concerted effort, which is a great thing, and they're trying to get people to again move down there and stuff. But I think that's where you kind of run into some of these problems.
There's a wash. I think it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm a big fan of the mayor's, by the way, that he's done that. It's a smart thing to do. I've seen in other cities where I lived in Albuquerque briefly, and their downtown. It's not a place where a lot of people with income like to spend their time. Strange enough. Mm-hmm. And they build their things out into the suburbs. A bigger Target, a Whole Foods, a Trader Joe. They put those places. Even bars are out there. And it's they don't invest downtown. You don't see any small boutiques go up. And they're trying to sell those kind of lofts. And it's also but what else is down there? And so it's kind of funny. But San Antonio seems to have that leg up to people. There's more culture here, I think, to be seen downtown. So it's kind of funny to see that. But I think it's definitely a great idea.
Yeah, there is, and I think part of the problem I think that they're trying to hurdle over is it's a generational thing more than a cultural thing. Because again, like we're mentioning, like when we were young, that wasn't the cool thing to hang out. There wasn't like you didn't go downtown to see bands, you didn't go downtown to the clubs. Really, I mean, it was
Sunken Gardens.
yeah, it wasn't a lot of that. And same thing with our parents. When our parents were young, from their generation, yeah, they got to go downtown on the weekends, and that's probably like their getaway and stuff. But again, part of their culture was to get away from where they grew up. So they moved out to the suburbs, and now they're out here, and they have these big yards and all this stuff. So they're less inclined, and less, like you mentioned, they're getting up there in their years, and they want to kind of get back and
Yeah, you're getting those empty nesters really trying to. I don't know what they're doing. Truth be told, they're just like, what are you guys doing on my floor?
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, and you notice now, and I mean, like I said, and I don't mean any of this in a negative way, because it is a positive thing that's kind of going through growing pains, but trying to get people down there, trying to get people involved. And again, it's like, I think part of the thing that you have to do at some point is really be open to the idea of not just looking at a specific group of people, a specific age group or specific educational background. It's just you have to look at it and make it kind of affordable to regular people. Like if you were to be able to say like, hey, there's this, you can move into a 3-bedroom, loft downtown for less, half of what you live here for or whatever. And it's near a good school, and it's near lots of family activities. It's near the river. It's near a lot of culture. It may be something that you're interested in. Like, yeah, I would do that. But again, like we're talking about where, if you're not in the tax bracket where you can afford $1 million, $500,000 condo, then what is there really open to you? There's not a lot of options, when you're talking about really living in the core, because you can't really say like, oh, well, like Broadway is like downtown, because it's not, because you're not, unless you're riding a bike, you're not really going to walk to the Alamo from Hildebrand and Broadway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're going for a run. And you're not going to take the whole family down.
Always remember this: the people that are selling those condos at $3 and $4 and $500,000, they bought it for a lot less, and that's what they're doing. Again, it's a build it and they will come concept. The people that buy it for pennies on the dollar, and they're going to wait it out. They're going to wait to see the lower offers, or they'll wait. And what else happens is they start to rent them.
So is the structure of the city, the way our city is built, are we just perpetually in a situation where we're not going to get, because like where we're going to get those type of word of mouth events or things to do? Because like Mario was saying, I agree with him completely, where I always hear about a lot of stuff after the fact. I'm like, oh, that sounded cool. That sounds like something I would have liked to have gone to, but you don't hear about it. But then again, isn't that almost every city? Because when I've visited New York, or I've visited, Chicago, or whatever city it is, it's not like there's one hangout for the whole city that everybody does together. It's not like every city has just this thing. It's sort of like, just, I guess my question is, how do things get popular enough where it'll become a constant? Because right now, what are the things people do here with regularity, right? It's go to that the Cowboys dance hall, and not that it's always cowboy music, but that dance hall is consistently, it's a gigantic venue. It's a nice venue even for live music. We saw Tiesto there, right? So that was pretty awesome. But then First Friday, there was
a boxing match there like a month or two ago.
Boxing at the Cowboys place, Cowboys dance hall, and the First Friday, that's I've still never been. I've still not gone. I've always wanted to, but that's something else that I haven't been to. But when we talk about our city and things to do, I don't know if we're even talking about it from our specific demographic and age group as far as just things we'd want to do. But I feel too like the thing about our city that, I don't know if hurts us is the right wording, but the way we're just so spread out. We're never going to be that city that's central, where our major population is downtown, our major population is inside 410. It's spread now. Now living out in the hill country isn't far enough. Now people want to be even further away than that, but have a job downtown, working for whatever place they work for.
It could be different in 20 years. And the only reason I look at the city of Denver, and it's very much like San Antonio in that it's a loop, and people like to live inside it. There's a lot of people who live outside of it, but I'm sure it's that it took years to develop that. There's just like the same way that there's whether it's Balcones Heights or the King Williams district, they have just those areas that everybody wants to live in, and they're very very wealthy and those kinds of things. But in time, both lots changed in the last 10 years. I mean, even I think you guys have bought houses out in this is. I mean, I grew up in the center of the city, So it was, I'm like, God, this is kind of far, but it's not really.
Yeah.
It's just in my mind it is.
Well, I remember when I moved out this way back in, what was it, like 8th grade, so like 93, 94 or whatever. And I remember, Henderson Pass right here. Like, if you went between here and 281, it was a cow pasture. Like where Northwoods Theater is and those apartments right there was cows, and it was just like fence line, and it drove down into this older neighborhood down here, but between here and there it was a pasture. And there was, I think Encino Park was like, I was like, whoa, someone lives out there in the boonies, But I think that's at some point where it will flip, because now it's like, if you do, and while you're here, just for the shits and giggles, like go out up Evans Road or up 281 now, because now you go up 281, it's not a highway anymore. It literally, to go from here to TPC Parkway might take you 25 minutes because it's stoplights.
Yeah.
Every quarter mile there's a stoplight, and it's no longer like, it doesn't feel like you're in the hill country anymore. It feels like all it is Target and blah 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 and Best
BJ's
Buy and whatever. And I think
BJ's restaurant.
There used to be all these, when you're going up that way towards 46, it was hills and all this stuff, and you might see this giant mansion up there, and you're like driving with your parents, like, holy shit, look at that, who lives there? And now it's like, as far as your eye can see on some of these kind of little vistas, it's just houses upon houses upon houses.
Well, but they're affordable, and that's the thing. That's the reason. I think even before the housing crisis, they just started putting up houses, and I'm like, you need a house there for what?
Yeah,
it's like 120,000, which to me, I'm just like, oh my god, like that's unheard of.
Yeah.
And then what I consider, this is a good sized city.
Yeah.
Most places I'm like, they don't even start. 3 is bare bones. I'm like, well, then I could see why people move all the way out there.
Yeah.
It's affordable.
And I think at some point, though, people will get, even if that stays affordable, I think at some point you just kind of, I think people get tired. And that was the initial, like, reason for kind of like the suburban exodus back in the day, was that people were, quote, quote, escaping from something, or they were trying to get somewhere else, and you're trying to get away from whether it was crime, perception of crime, or trying to, I'm using quotes, air quotes for people that are listening, like, bettering yourself, or whatever it was that people
school
thought
districts.
That was.
It's always,
whatever that was. And now it's like traffic. Everywhere you go, like it's traffic, and it's like this mass. You can't go to the store, you can't go to H-E-B without like being in this like line with 40 people, and it's becoming that stress that's kind of taking the place of what you were trying to escape from, which was like, I want to go out. People always say like, you move out to the country and get some peace of mind and like, watch the stars, and you can't do that out here now.
Yeah,
because it's
well. I mean, I don't think. I think we're headed that way. I think as a country.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned the school district part. It's I can send my kids to a better school, and our home is more affordable, our taxes are lower. One of the unique things in San Antonio I noticed when I left years ago was that San Antonio has, I don't know how many number of school districts. I think they had an outrageous number of school districts, whereas like if you go to Austin or if you go to Boston, they have one. And I mean one, because they pool all of the taxes in the same school district, but it serves the entire city. Where San Antonio hand selects, no, you guys go here, so the money stays in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're going to put up this neighborhood out in this area, the money's going to stay here. We're not going to send it to the kids that go to South San, and those kind of things.
And you start to see people assemble in mini cities, like the people that shop at La Cantera and that live in that side of town. They stay there because now there's a grocery store and a McDonald's and a Walmart, and it's all out there. So why drive to the northeast side of town? Because you have the exact same thing that you have at the Rim on 35 and 410 and 1604.
20 minutes to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got everything, kind of a repeat. There's kind of a, if you go to the Rim side, if you go to La Cantera, if you go to the Forum, you have a repeat of little mini cities. And then the North Star area, it's all a reflection of itself in our town, so everybody just kind of stays in those general areas.
Well, that whole area of the Northwest it's like every what it seems like every 10 miles or even less, well, probably like 5 miles is another H-E-B or a Walmart.
Right.
And they're right across the street from each other, and then you just go down a little bit further to the next major intersection, and boom, you've got them repeated again, and you've got the same restaurants in that area too.
But it's because those areas can serve that economic structure for that one area, so that that Walmart or that H-E-B can serve that area, and they don't have to worry about it, being killed by one down the road. I don't know who competes with H-E-B around here, but
no one.
Walmart does probably.
You can thank us for that, HEB.
HEB.
There's no competition.
Killed them all. Killed my Albertsons.
Kroger,
Handy Andy.
Handy Andy.
Albertsons thought it was high
Wings.
class, though. They were
Fiesta,
expensive.
Fiesta is still kicking. I just saw Fiesta
I like those
back
places.
in my home south
So you
side
go
area.
get your lengua.
Oh man, now I'm gonna get hungry.
And Johnny's chamoy and nasty
Some of my
pickle
tasty stuff.
stuff.
I send it back with me.
But I'm not. It just seems like at just some point there just has to be a breaking point where people, and who knows when that will come, when people kind of just get tired of that, of those carbon copies, because even now that makes, like you're bringing up, that makes it harder for even us to interact, because now, you live out by the Forum now.
Yeah.
You used to live out by Bandera. And like it was like a thing, right? As for us as a group, like where Nick lives out there to where you live now. Like
Yeah.
You're talking about different sides of the freaking
Yeah.
city. But
Nick's
at the same
like
time, so
Austin.
if we were to be like, let's go to restaurant X by my house, you're like, well, there's one down the street from my house. And there's one down the street from Nick's house. So it's like,
Let me ask you this:
You know.
if they threw in a light rail and you get there faster without any worry, would you feel better about it?
probably.
And
I
that's,
mean,
and that's,
but-
what, that's what's coming next.
And people are fighting.
Yeah.
That's
tooth
what,
and
but,
nail,
but
like-
that's what they're bringing. Even Denver now is getting their light rail, which a lot of people take. And the only thing that, like, I'm like, and truth be told, I've never been big on. Even when I lived in Boston, I took the T like 10 times in 5 years. I didn't have to really, but it's true. Like, if, instead of sitting in 20-40 minute traffic, or if you guys want to go to the Spurs game as opposed to even the Via park and ride, forget about it. If you had the light rail, boom,
Yeah.
you're down there $5 and you're in and out. And with the population growing, it's coming. It'll take 10 years.
Well, I know
But
they're
it will
building the
show up.
trolley system again now downtown.
But they're fighting
That's
too,
awesome.
aren't they?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is that they're trying to fix things in certain ways, and there's so many other ways to fight it that it just delays it forever.
Fight
which
it. Fight it because what?
Money.
Right. Exactly.
I think the I don't know if it
Properties
was the
and-
light rail thing or the trolley thing, but it was part of it was through Via, I think.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the money that's allocated for Via's expansion stuff doesn't fit under it. So you can't use that money that they have for expansion and whatever infrastructure. You can't use it for the trolley or for the light rail because it wasn't.
They'll have to
initial.
come up with a new bond or something
Yeah.
like that. But the funny thing is, when you see a city like Los Angeles, it has terrible public transportation,
Oh, yeah.
or you don't want to take it. It's miserable to live in Los Angeles. Me and Mike were visiting out there. So we were in traffic for 2 hours going.
That's unbelievable. There's nothing that could get me to live out there and have a car or do public transportation, because and I remember when we left LA, I thought I will never complain about San Antonio's traffic again,
No.
because and it wasn't like we were driving through rush hour time.
No,
or
it was
there
11:30 at night.
It was 11:30 at night,
Yeah.
and it took us 2 hours to get from one spot to another. That was
Jesus.
probably only 15, 20 miles
Yeah, if
from each
that.
other. If that. That's probably a stretch. And it was just general traffic. And then if there's construction or stuff going on, forget it. You're not going anywhere. And one of my favorite things about traveling in certain big cities is being able, like in London, taking the tube to get from place to place, or taking the L in Chicago,
San Francisco,
and
Chicago,
buying
New York.
those passes and stuff like that. I do really love the idea of not needing a car, not because it's for green reasons, although that's a nice benefit, but just the concept of traveling, like even to New Zealand, just walking everywhere. In like 2 weeks, I felt myself lose like 7 pounds.
Yeah.
I felt a big like a pop in my step, and I felt more energetic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's also one of the things that helps people that live in really overpopulated cities thrive, is that at least they feel that extra energy, because you look at New Yorkers and the majority of that city walks, right?
Oh, yeah.
They
They'll
walk or they
walk
take the
blocks.
subway everywhere. And there's something great about that, is knowing every time you wake up, you've got to walk out of your place by a certain amount of time, but part of your journey every day is you're going to be walking 2 to 10,000 or 20,000 steps every day. And every time I've traveled and gone through that, I feel great. Like when I come back to San Antonio for about a week or two, I feel the benefits of that exercise, that mandatory exercise. And once it goes away and I get back used to using my car to get everywhere in the city, even if it's from one spot to another. In San Antonio, we are absolutely crazy about getting those close parking spots. You'll just see cars doing circles waiting for the parking spot instead of just going the first available and walk. I mean, we are absolutely against.
So is this another Get Fit San Antonio message? Another?
I mean, I don't know. It's just what I observe, and maybe
I agree.
maybe from
I
a
agree.
very thin lens. But that's kind of the stuff that I think hurts general morale as a city, and why you see people in bad moods is lack of energy, and I just not.
It's also just really hot here all the time.
Yeah.
Or freezing
Truth
the
be
next
told,
day.
I mean, that's why I don't visit in the summer. I'm like, I can't. I don't know how I grew up here. Really, it's so miserable.
And it's amazing that I've been here the whole time because I think I function worse in heat than anybody here. Like, I can't handle it. And Johnny knows.
I'm already feeling the sweat. Really, I mean, it's humid here. I'm like, God, I'm not used to this.
Johnny grew up coming over to my house on the weekends, and
Ice cold.
I had a. In my bedroom, I had one of those
window unit.
Yeah, I had a window unit, but my
he always
mom
put me towards the window unit, not him.
and my mom put in my room instead of the living room. I got the AC unit that had it was like the one that's meant to cool like 4 rooms.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the main house one, but we put it in my room because I wanted it so it could be extra cold. And so at night, I'd put it on like super high, low cold,
Right down my throat. I wake up and I'm all hoarse.
But that was heaven for me. That was like pure icebox heaven, and.
Well, like in Denver, I ran my air conditioner 2 times last summer, and I haven't. And I don't run my heater at all.
Really?
Yeah. And the only reason I ran it because I had people over for 4th of July, and I think one other day, Cinco de Mayo. That was the only time I never run my air conditioner because it's just you open the door. There's no humidity.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. It's not even the heat.
It's the humidity. It's miserable.
See,
I can't.
Kills you.
And that's the thing about humidity is that's why people don't walk.
That's very true.
Like a good example, for those that don't know,
balls start sweating.
Yes.
Kids start sweating.
it's disgusting.
Oh, it is. It's awful.
I felt it was so awakening / shaming for me. Like we spent a couple years ago, we spent a week up in Boulder, and that was like awesome. I fell in love with it. But it was like I felt like I'm like not even looking at people's faces. I'm like everyone has beautiful legs. Like everyone just
Denver is a very healthy. I mean, I'm training for my first triathlon for next month. For God's sakes, it just they snag you, and it's like if you don't. You feel like an alien there if you don't do something healthy.
So you're
or weird.
getting high on your own supply and you're training in Denver.
This is true. No, it's so true. I mean, people, God, I always remember when I first got there, the first thing I remember, it wasn't even legal yet, but I mean, everybody had it. I went to Bally's to work out and in the morning, and I walk in the locker room, it smells like weed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then the other one, driving home, and now I work close to home, but driving home, in the go home traffic, there's weed, smells like weed all over the highway. It's just out there.
Explain the exact law of what's allowed in the state and how the federal law applies to that.
Well, the federal law has just basically been ignored, as I understand it. The Obama administration said we're not going to prosecute any the federal law in any way.
Okay.
Now, marijuana is legal for sale. Now, you have to have a license. And so
sell it?
Yes, yeah. So like the medicinal people that were already making it medicinally, they had to apply for a license like as of last year to sell it without to anybody. And everybody who didn't do that is doing that now. So it's going like hotcakes. I think they've made like $12 million already in taxes, just in taxes. Just in taxes. Oh yeah, it's going like hotcakes. I mean, it's out there.
So get fit, San Antonio, and get high.
Well, you know what's funny about
taxes.
it? Honestly, I mean, again, I don't think of myself as an expert on it, but I mean, there hasn't really. I don't see any social consequence to it.
Yeah,
it's I think people get high at home, and that's what they do.
Yeah,
and it's not saying I don't smell it on the street or do it, but I just don't see it as any kind of social consequence. It's like, what's the big deal? If anything, I just think chills everybody out.
Yeah.
The stigma is just that it's been made illegal, and so it puts people on one side of the fence versus another.
Yeah,
well, the other part too is that now people get really good stuff, and it's actually really I think we either get like I don't know, it was a quarter of a gram for like $20, whatever it was. You get and not to mention they have hundreds of flavors. So it's like going and it's like when you go buy
like
tea,
a Baskin Robbins.
Yeah, absolutely, even more.
31,000.
Yeah,
flavors.
you can get the stuff that does this and stuff that does that. There's edibles that do this. I mean, I'm not real. I don't smoke out or anything much. So it's. But I'm like, wow, it's a good business.
Yeah,
it seems.
Yeah.
And
so
people
all that
dig
stuff, and this is where I can get behind that because I'm the same way. I've never used it, but
what's useful about it? What's that from?
But the thing is, so like they're like everything they sell there is that all grown in the States.
That's correct.
See,
it
that's
has to be,
and that's what I can get behind because that's where, and I think that's where you have a good argument for legalizing stuff because I mean that's how you defeat a black market is by legalizing something.
The Mexican cartels must be furious.
Yeah.
It's the thing about it. I think I'm waiting for the big study to come out that marijuana is actually healthier than cigarettes. That's the one I'm waiting because they're not the stuff they're growing is they grow it, they engineer it agriculturally, whereas what is it all the shit they put in a cigarette?
Exactly.
I'm just waiting for that one to come out, and they're like, well, fuck that, I'll just start smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
So it's but again, I mean, they have stuff that again, I always thought like, wow, it makes you sleepy, and so I don't dig that. But then they have like, oh, they have this one that has sativa. I'm like, you're all lucid. I was like, whoa, like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I mean, there are places. I mean, it's the size supposedly the size of a Walmart. There's one like literally across the street from my house. It's downtown.
Oh, wow.
And you go down, and it's like, hey, everybody's all happy. But it's right next to a sandwich shop.
What will San Antonio get first? Legalized marijuana or an NFL team?
NFL team.
Well, if you legalize marijuana, you could probably end up paying for the NFL team
with the tax money.
With a new dome. It should go to education. That's what all the money's going in Colorado. Or most of it's going to education.
Yeah.
So, that's a good idea.
Kind of jumping back to the whole San Antonio and walking thing, for those that know, I live in Shirts now, and I live right down the street from the Blue Bonnet Palace. I don't know if anybody's heard of that place. It's mostly...
Is that a men's club?
No, it's mostly like a country... the men's club. It's mostly like a country bar. But it's a huge venue. Like, I wouldn't say it's a large venue like a dome or anything like that, but it's a good medium size. Like Joe Sabi's out in Helotes, probably even just a little bit bigger than that. And last weekend I went for the first time to see the Spasmatics, and as I was leaving my house to drive literally 2 minutes, I was like, maybe I should walk this, and I'm like, fuck that, dude, I'm not gonna walk this. I'm overweight.
You should have taken your Razor scooter.
Yeah, right. Does anybody ride Razor scooters anymore?
You got a Parkway. You used to take Sharks Parkway, man.
Yeah, and that's what I did.
That's a straight shot all the way down.
You know my biggest reason for doing any of that shit? I'm too afraid to get hit by a car.
Yeah, exactly. Well, see, and that's the thing. You're passing...
And I bite, I'm
true.
doing shit. I'm like, fuck that. I see people get run over.
Well,
I'm terrified to jog in my own neighborhood right here.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
just
because it's a busy area.
I have to find a track.
No, at night, early morning, yes, and at night you can.
Okay.
But
I don't know.
because these roads are wide enough, but I just mean in general. Like,
seriously,
even if you jog up Henderson Pass, it's got a designated bike lane.
Oh,
and you
yeah.
see joggers
People
running all the
still
time.
hit you, though.
But people still
Yeah.
get hit. I don't know if Rick, did you see that car that was inside the
That's what I was
brick
telling,
on the
Castro
side of the
that
road?
other day. We were driving down Henderson Pass, and he's like, "Oh, these condos." I'm like, "No, they're neighborhoods, and they're actually pretty nice houses." And they,
Right.
I said the only problem with living on Henderson Pass is that every week somebody plows straight through
Those
someone's
brick
backyard,
walls?
those
Yeah.
brick walls.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it's windy, but it's not that. I mean, I'm assuming people that are drinking or whatever.
Yeah, but at nighttime I hear people winding up their cars at the light right here and getting their races going because of the little chicanes,
Yeah.
in the winding part of it. I don't know how cops don't
Yeah,
hang out
just
right here and
stay
just
there
wait.
and just make money.
And I always
mean-
think about that because I think it's 35 right here, and
It's 30,
I
yeah.
always go up and down Henderson Pass.
yeah,
and,
it's 35.
During the course of a normal day sober, and it's hard to go 35. I'm going 45, 50.
Right.
And I'm always like, if I was a
Busted.
cop, I would just be sitting there on one of those side roads.
But you're a dreamy driver though. You you daze in and out.
That's only when I'm with somebody. When people are
Oh, yeah,
talking
that's
to me,
true.
and you get me all worked up, and I'm like, "No, motherfucker." And then
No. I'm with you. You start driving slower. I'm like, oh my God, we're
That's
on the
'cause I'm
highway.
talking, I'm
You're
chatting,
going 30
man.
miles an hour.
No.
Anyway, so that totally ruined my transition to talk about the Spasmatics. So we're just gonna plow right through it
You're talking
anyway.
about walking.
Yes, well, walking to the
Take your
Spasmatics.
scooter down.
So it was
Get
my
your
first time
Vespa.
seeing the Spasmatics, and I realized that they're one of those things that really can separate people. As a musician, it hurt my heart because for those who don't know, it's a franchise business where we have our own Texas regional version of the Spasmatics, and there's another one in another region, and different people, same outfits, same songs, same everything. It's all backtracked. There was even a portion where they did tribute to Queen. They did Bohemian Rhapsody, and during the operatic portion, they all put down their instruments and pretended to do other stuff while the actual song just played in the background.
So it's
and
part
then
of
when
the
it picked
shtick?
back, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is that everybody's going nuts, and they love it. I mean, there was hundreds of people there. And anybody who knows about the Spasmatics and that particular venue knows that you get your tickets early or you don't get in. They've turned people away even with tickets. The parking is ridiculous. And it's for essentially a tribute band. It's essentially a karaoke experience.
But it sounds like a rock band version of pop.
Yeah.
Like where you go hear Miley Cyrus or Bieber or whoever these people are.
But is it
except
like
there's
what kind of music?
But it's all
musicians
80s.
doing it.
These guys are all 80s. So they only play 80s tributes or covers or whatever you want to call it. They only do 80s music. And they'll talk about 70s or 60s just to make a nod to it and and then they'll jump right back into the 80s. But it's all, like I said, it's all backtracked. A friend was there, and they're like, "Oh, I love these guys. They're awesome. They sound just like the originals." And I'm like, "Do you see a keyboard player up there?" They're like, "No." And I'm like, "But you hear the keyboard, right?" And they're like, "Oh, how's that happening?" And I'm like, "That's for people that aren't musicians. They don't catch that. They may not realize that that's what's going on." While there's other people that are in the crowd, and they're like, "Wait a second, I don't hear." I don't see a cowbell player.
Well, it's how you can fill an entire stadium with a pop star holding a microphone.
Yeah.
And there's no band in the back, and you hear music, and yet all 35, 40,000 people are screaming and loving it. They're not.
Oh yeah.
They're not
Like a
booing.
DJ playing music
Yeah,
for
they're
a
not.
CD
They're not.
player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not booing.
Yeah.
Well, and now
they're not booing about
we
it.
even now expect lip syncing. People don't get in trouble for it anymore.
You're not just getting live. They're not paying for necessarily live performance. What they're paying for is more of
The
an
experience.
exhibit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's something that I noticed with Spasmatics. Like I said, there were people there that were from 18 years of age to people that were in their 60s. And everybody was singing at the top of their lungs, or milling around or getting drinks or whatever. But they were all there, and they were all paying customers, and they were all enjoying it. And there was a portion where the guy said, "Who's here to see us for the first time?" And half of the place went, "Yeah." "Who's been here before?" "Yeah." The other half. I mean,
it's like when I go see Monday Night Raw. And, I'm a big fan. I go nuts. I was nuts having a great time in Monday Night Raw. And people are like, "Isn't wrestling fake?" I'm like,
it's entertainment. And that's
exactly. I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm
you're being
it's
entertained.
a soap opera.
So then here's the thing. Here's what I kind of struggled with. And they are a franchise, and I don't know how much money they actually get as individual musicians, but let's say that they did get something substantial enough to quote unquote sell out. Is it really selling out at that point? I mean, if somebody were to come to me and say, "Hey, I want you to be in a '90s cover band,"
I've been in show business a long time, and it's show money.
yeah.
So I don't even know what selling out really
And
is.
coming from the point where I am now, I'm going to be 35 on Friday, actually, in 2 days. I'll be 35 years old.
Older today.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Gray in your beard.
And I have a 17-month-old, and I visit friends that have, and I guess not friends. What's below friends?
I know people.
Yes, I know
Associates.
people, associates, that I go to their house, and they've got 2 TVs outside, one wrapped up in plexiglass to protect from the rain. They've got a pool, they've got a jacuzzi, they've got a fireplace outside that looks like there was a house there, and everything went away except for the fireplace.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just there in the yard. And
I like those.
and I'm like, how did they do that? And it's like, oh, well, this guy sells cars. I'm like, that's like to me, that's one of the worst things. I hate dealing with those people. And yet this guy, if you want to say he's sold out or whatever, he's banking. And the Spasmatics, if that's what they're doing, if they're quote unquote selling out or whatever, they could be banking.
So I think what you're trying to figure out is like the
Acceptability of
the
it.
nobility of being, because I know you're big into the local music scene. You want to see San
Mhm.
Antonio's music scene rise. So
Right.
you're talking about the nobility of starting, a 3 or 4 piece band where there's a legitimate drummer, guitarist, bassist,
Mhm.
vocalist, maybe a multi-instrumentalist, somewhere between those 3 guys or 4 guys, and they pay their dues, they play the local clubs, they get people to notice them, they get social media popularity, and they start moving up the ladder and hope one of those 500 bands in the city break through and get a hit on the national terrestrial radio and find a way to come through. And you're feeling like maybe a band like a cover band, a franchised, I didn't know they were franchised until
cover
today,
band.
but a franchised band like the Spasmatics are providing entertainment. So I think the
Yeah.
thing is, the people that want to go see Radiohead and Pearl Jam or Nine Inch Nails or Tool or whoever live are
Mhm.
not the same people that are going to see that, unless they're, like Rick said, someone bought the ticket for them, or they're dragged in
Yeah.
there by their girlfriend or their boyfriend dragged them, and so they wanted to go see that as well. And I think the more people's spectrums are open to different types of entertainment, because I grew up a fan of wrestling too, as just an example. And my cousin Anthony and I, we just watched WrestleMania here, which I hadn't done in a really long time. I hadn't watched it, and I knew exactly what I was watching. And that entertainment factor is still there. It's amazing to me how, after being so, I wouldn't even say I'm a casual fan anymore. If I happen to be flipping the TV and I catch it, I'll watch 10 minutes of it and then go back to whatever I was doing. Whereas
Yeah.
like Anthony is still very much a fan, and I let him kind of re-educate me on all the big matchups and what the hype was. And a very different thing to watch than like boxing or MMA, which are some interesting topics for the future.
Oh yeah,
sports.
Yeah, they are, and there's real stakes where the basic premise of wrestling, if to take the wizard out of the curtain, behind the curtain, is those matches are predetermined. It's a predetermined thing, just like having a backing track for a performance is a predetermined thing, that these songs will be played with this backing track, and those guys are just jumping around.
Yeah, exactly.
And that brings up another thing, like one of Johnny's, I guess I'll say hobby, because music is a hobby for me too. Although Johnny's actually performed as a DJ, and a lot of people that don't know the DJ scene, that don't understand it, a lot of them think, well, what's so special about getting up there with these turntables or now digital playlists and just clicking play, but you got the headphones on and it looks like you're doing stuff and you're just twisting knobs. Johnny, that's something fun you could kind of jump in real quick.
Well, it was funny. Last summer, I haven't DJed since last summer. I played this big party. It was a huge party. I had an hour and a half set, and I was in a lineup with about 6 other DJs. Lucky me, the way I got into it, one of my good friends in Boston, Kevin Tebow, he's an amazing DJ, big deal back west. And of course, he had a lot of friends that were DJs, and so they're the ones that taught me to DJ. Now, they taught me in nightclubs. You do this. I opened for them. And these are the rules. This is how you do it. They taught me a craft, and the craft wasn't just playing. It wasn't just a technique. It's connecting with your audience. It's understanding the pulse. Your job as a DJ is, number one, is to keep them dancing. If they stop, you failed. And so go and drop off a cliff. Now, how to do so is you have to pay attention to them. You spend a lot of time listening to music, obviously.
Right.
What's going on, what's current, or what's a vibe. And as a DJ, you learn to find your own vibe. But one thing I found with these guys when I was DJing last summer, these guys just must spend a lot of time just kind of putting their tunes together in their room, and then they play with their friends, and that's about it. And when you DJ at a nightclub, the audience has no mercy. It's if you dropped them, you better pick them up fast, or they're going to let you know. Yeah. And they didn't care that people kind of stopped, that they kept killing every song between. They kept killing them, like. They go back and forth. I'm like, and like I try not to criticize other DJs. I really don't, because everybody has their own style of form. Yeah. But I'm like, they were just, I could tell nobody had taught them this is how it works in a nightclub. This is what you do. Your responsibility is to them, not to your playlist. Not so you can record it and make you feel like you put it together. If you didn't have them dancing, you failed. And so as a DJ, that's why I still think that's why there are music producers and there are DJs, and I love some of the music that Calvin Harris or Deadmau5 produce, but they're not DJs. When they put to perform, they're putting on a concert. A real DJ, Paul Oakenfold, still performs as a DJ in nightclubs, not at Verizon Amphitheater. That he goes and listens to whatever he's listening to and what's current, and he feels what the vibe of the crowd is doing, and that's what he plays. It's not set every night. Granted, they play certain songs, because they're hot, but a real DJ finds the pulse, finds the soul, and there's a connection between the audience and the DJ, and that's the energy, not just like a show up and play, and that's the difference between.
And see
real DJ
that would have been one of my first misconceptions, is that the DJs are even looking at what the crowd's doing. I always assume that they're in their own space, they're in their own little world, and they're I think maybe 10 years ago, when I would see DJs playing nightclubs and stuff like that, I always thought it was fascinating how you could literally see them with their hands flipping through records. You would see, and I could tell enough about what they were doing, because I'm one of those guys, when I go to a show for music or a concert, I'm always paying attention to the technical stuff as much as I'm fine-tuned listening to the music that I'm hearing, and I'll even judge a venue on how good the bass resonance sounds and how good, if any of the treble clips and distorts at the top of its end, if it's bright and crisp. And so I would watch DJs play, and I would notice how one record's spinning, they had half of the headphone on so they could hear what's currently audible to the crowd, and then the other half is they're testing, am I going to use this record to blend in for my next transition?
They're beat matching.
And then they would change their mind. They'd be like, no. And I would literally watch him pull the record off, put it back in this little sleeve, flip, and then you could watch him organically trying to figure out, what's going to go next. And I always thought that was so fascinating. And so, of course, the digital age has really changed a lot of people that believe in organic music, like a lot of us do, into how much we appreciate some of the work that these guys do. Like, have you guys ever seen the documentary Sound City?
No,
it's
not yet.
Phenomenal. Anybody that likes music on any level should watch
the Dave Grohl one.
Yes, that's Dave Grohl directed and did this documentary about how digital Pro Tools, the digital recording software, basically put an end to the integrity of the music we hear, because now anybody can grab a laptop and start making music and do pretty much anything that's going to sound sugary and sweet and, accessible.
As a DJ on that part, because believe me, in the DJ world, there are a lot of people that, I DJ on a laptop. However, I was taught on 2 CDJs how to beat match, how to do that. The only reason I use a laptop because that's where all the music is stored. And even my mentor has switched over because this is great. Now I don't have to focus on all this other crap. I can focus on the audience. I can focus on technique and a lot of other things. And there are a lot of guys that are still vinyl only guys, and they can wax on about this and wax off about DJs that use. In my opinion, Paul Van Dyke is a big shot DJ. He always said this: as long as they're dancing and you got your tune, that's all that matters. Your audience lets you know whether you're doing it right or wrong.
Yeah.
The DJs that'll wax about this and wax about that. In the end, if you have your tune, if you have your vibe, you have your audience, you're doing it right. Well, and one thing I remember, my cousin Marcus, who's a DJ here in San Antonio, he told me a few years ago, and he was right. He said, take your laptop, put it down. Get it out, because you spend a lot of time looking at your laptop, especially if it's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. Put it down so you can't see it, and you spend your time looking at the audience. And I did that a few years ago, and it's huge. And that you spend your time seeing, what are they doing? How are they reacting? As opposed to, this is what's on my playlist, and I have to, no, ditch it. Pay attention to them.
See, and it's interesting you say that, because then really putting that back into the Spasmatics portion, they had everybody on their feet. I mean, they really were entertaining. And like I said, as a musician going in, I was hurt, because I was like, this isn't right. But from an entertainment perspective, I love karaoke, and that's pretty much what it was. It was just mass karaoke, and I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable. But kind of going into that idea just a little bit longer, I know we kind of, as an aside, we wanted to mention covers. Being coming off of a big old 80s tribute cover thing, I'm going to have to go last on this. Rick, I'll defer to you first for some of your favorite covers.
I don't even know yet. I'll let Mike go first.
Oh, my gosh.
Pass it around.
That's awesome.
I've been enthralled.
You have
so
to educate me here.
Well, again, just, a cover is basically, any band of any, it doesn't matter if it's a known band or a local band, that has their specific set of songs that they created for themselves, and then they will do a cover of a song everybody universally knows. So basically, like in Wayne's World, when he starts playing Stairway to Heaven, and they're like, no, Stairway denied. It's the most popular cover of its time, where everybody tried to learn how to play that song, and then bands would try to play it live. And so today, the thing is, what are some of the best covers, and how do you judge what a good cover is? Is it that the band can replicate the cover to sound near identical vocals and all to what you heard? Or is it somebody that can take that vocal and you hear the actual music, but it's been changed or altered in such a way that does the song an amazing homage?
Like a remix.
Yeah, like a remix.
See, this is where I have to flail here. I'm not. It's not that I don't. Mike gives me crap on this, but I do. I mean, I know the dance music scene very, very well. I don't spend my time listening to a lot of rock music. I love rock. He knows I do. I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan. I love those. I love Tool. I love those kind of things. But I spend my time in electronic dance. So you asked me for a cover. I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Well, let's take some Nine Inch Nails examples. They did Physical, which I think was originally a Queen. Adamant. Okay. Oh, but they did a cover.
He did Get Down, Make Love.
Yes. Okay, so there's 2 covers
cover.
right there of Nine Inch Nails that they've done. There's some good mentions.
And then Johnny Cash did a cover of Nine Inch Nails. Hurt.
That would
I did
probably
hear that. That's cool.
Well, and Trent even said after hearing Johnny Cash's version, it's his song now.
Right.
I mean, that to me, that's exactly what a cover should be. One to throw out here that's totally not anybody that most people would have heard, but somebody that I'm totally infatuated with right now. Black Lab did a cover of a song called Your Ghost, and it was originally done by some 90s. I don't even think she was on anybody's radar at all in the 90s, but it's a really random cover, and they totally did their own version of it, and they really owned it. So if anybody can check it out, Black Lab, Your Ghost, that's, like I said, not a famous one, but one that I've always loved, and it's always been near and dear to me as just a Guns N' Roses fan, was their version of Live and Let Die, which was originally, was it the Beatles, or was it just...
It was like Wings.
Wings, right, yeah.
Their version's a lot better.
Who's Wings?
Wings sucks.
And that's funny stuff like that too. Growing up,
it's a James Bond song too. On top of that,
oh really?
Growing up,
that's what they.
That's right.
That's what it's for.
I had no music exposure. It was whatever I went and discovered for myself. Because unless I was going to let myself listen to Tejano, which was all available to me in the family, I really had no other exposure. And so a lot of songs I grew up with thinking, oh, that's a Guns N' Roses song.
Yeah.
Live and
Yeah.
Let Die is Guns N' Roses song,
yeah.
you know. And I had to find out later, oh, that's a cover, you know. And when I heard, you know, Paul McCartney singing, I'm like, wait, whose song is this?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, what's the other song? Remember that Replicants album that Ken Andrews did, and Maynard was on it, and what's his name, Greg Edwards.
Uh-huh.
Did that. It was a little cover EP, and they did a cover of Silly Love Songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't associate the two because their version is so different. It's good, and it's kind of like, you know, darker. And then one day I heard like the Paul McCartney version, which I didn't know was the real version. I'm like, ugh, this song sucks. I mean, it doesn't suck. It's just not the kind of song I dig. You know what I mean? It's just it wasn't my thing. I'm not a big Paul McCartney fan, anyways.
Well, and now that I've heard Pearl Jam do Last Kiss, and I've heard them do Pink Floyd's
yeah.
Mother, you know, stuff like that is incredible. Especially when you see big bands still do covers. Like
I love that.
You rarely see, you know, the big boys do covers. So when they do them live, that's kind of an amazing treat because you can tell that, hey, they're actually fans of music like we are. You know, I
right.
feel like if I was in a real band, I would feel like compelled to play at least one or two covers every night, and it'd always be a different one. Like if you've ever Googled Smashing Pumpkins, how many covers they've done, it's incredible how many covers they have played live. Like their version of Landslide, phenomenal,
that's
great.
phenomenal.
Not as good as Dixie Chicks, but
Oh,
Oh,
God,
come
I
on.
hate the Dixie Chicks version.
what?
No,
Why?
Rick has a
Sarah
Rick
loves
has the
Dixie. My
biggest
wife loves
crush
it.
on the.
It's not a crush. Me and Jeff were texting today, and I said if
Still on Dixie Chicks.
I said if you could pick any whatever you consider famous or successful singer to sing the song, make up a song about your life, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good
And
topic.
my answer was Natalie Maines.
Wow.
It was Natalie Maines and Chuck Reagan.
Natalie Imbruglia? What?
No, it was Natalie
Wow.
Maines from Dixie Chicks or Chuck Reagan from Hot Water Music.
I gotta go with BB King on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as what?
If I was to pick a guy to
gotcha. Gotcha.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I
Why?
gotta go with BB King on that one.
No, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
Man.
I'm trying to think of a cover. There was a
Failure. I mentioned this last time. Failure's cover
yeah.
of Depeche Mode's "Enjoy the Silence." That's one of the best covers. That's not meant to sound like the original, but does it a phenomenal justice. That it turns it into its own song on its own. It's pretty incredible. That's one of my other favorite covers.
We mentioned Marilyn Manson a few episodes back.
Sweet Dreams.
Sweet Dreams.
Yeah.
And,
I like that song.
That's a
I know
Spell
you
on
do.
You.
No, I do
But-
too. I don't like Marilyn Manson's
I know,
band.
fair
I
enough.
still think that song's awesome.
No, that is a great cover. And that,
I don't know.
Well,
if
I
it's
put a
because
spell on you as
we were
well.
young when it came out, but I
It still
totally
holds the
dig
test of time. That's still a legit cover.
Oh,
and
yeah.
another example, I can't remember if I'd heard the original before I heard that song.
Really?
I can't. Yeah,
Well,
No, you had
okay,
to.
I'm not sure.
Wow.
Funny. Okay, so I'll dive into this.
Interesting.
So one of my little things that I spin into once in a while when I'm
Oh no,
DJing
I
is-
knew it. That's
I have-
Eurythmics.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Eurythmics.
Okay, I had heard it. Never
No,
mind.
I have
So you
this-
lost your 80s card.
No, my bad. I'd heard
I
it.
go into this thing where I do a Sweet Dreams.
Late.
It's like my own remix of
Where is
4
it in?
different Sweet Dreams songs. Where it's like the original Sweet Dreams, then one that's like the Paul Van Dyke remix, then it's like the Eminem one, and then it's like this other one. I mean, it's just like this whole
Oh,
blend.
nice.
But people, I do it because it's a crowd pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
people love that song. Like
It's
if
a great track.
If it's a
It's
little dry,
powerful.
and I could tell they're wanting something a little bit more, from to feel that retro. I throw that in there. There they go again. It gets the
That's
floor
cool.
warm again. So it's
And I'd be
damn good
remiss
beat.
if I didn't mention. Well, of course, I put a spell on you. I love that Manson
too.
track. I think that's great. And then also, and I know this opinion is probably not shared but I went through a
Chili
huge
Peppers.
No. I went through a huge punk phase. So Me First and the Gimme Gimmes is like a tribute band, and they only do covers. And I think it's like one guy from Foo Fighters, somebody from Lagwagon, somebody from Swinging Utters, and I can't remember the other bands. But it's just punk.
That's like all they do is covers, right?
Yeah, that's all they do is covers, and they've done like Elton John, Neil Diamond, Barry Manilow, freaking amazing covers, and they're all punkified. Their most popular ones, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." I think everybody's probably heard that. If you ever watched an X Games, it's been on there, and it's
what's
just really.
the X Games.
Oh dear God!
Is that Xbox? What happens when a band's best song is a cover? That's bad. Is that good for you, or is that you suck?
That's sad.
That's yeah.
Well, the thing is,
Orgy.
that's the problem is that
Right?
like
Blue
it's-
Monday, yeah.
the
Blue
issue-
Monday was
Blue
their
Monday
best song?
and that was an amazing cover.
Orgy's Blue Monday. Wasn't that their number one hit? Is
Yeah,
that
and
the
I
only-
thought it was a great cover. And that song's been covered before by other people, too. And
Right.
there was a female vocalist, I want to say she's from Iceland or something.
You're thinking of
Kate
Bizarre
Haddon?
Love Triangle, probably.
No.
That girl that did that one.
Oh, I don't know if she did that one, but anyway, she did a good version. You were going to say something, though.
I don't know. I forgot. Thanks a lot.
For those who like Prince, the Be Good Tanya's, and this one's You Either Love It or Hate It, did a version of When Doves Cry. That they rearranged it. They made it an acoustic song, and I think it sounds amazing. It's very mellow, though, so it's not like operatic or so theatrical that Prince did it. It's a lot dialed back, but an interesting one to check out.
I've got a cover that I did of Foo Fighters' Everlong. I called it Ever Longer because it slows it down. It's only played with one guitar, and it's slower.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll let you hear it sometime.
Did you ever hear
72 minutes long. It's still playing right now.
Exactly. I haven't
Still
stopped.
going.
Did you ever hear the Howard Stern version of Everlong?
Oh, yeah.
In the
Oh,
studio?
yeah.
Oh,
The
God.
acoustic? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's great.
I love that one. Not a cover, but anyway.
Right.
I think that's pretty much
Yeah.
pretty much our show, guys. we're already at an hour.
Thank
and
you for
20
having
minutes.
me on as a
Oh,
special
yeah.
guest.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for being
Thank you,
here.
Johnny,
We
for
appreciate
hanging
it.
out with us, man. This was
You guys
awesome.
are covering the cost of my trip, right?
Get with
Yeah.
Mario on that. He'll cut you a check.
Paid for by Mario.
We'll have to
I
do
might
it.
be able to write this trip off now.
We'll have to do a
Check to
Kickstarter
plug
or
anything
something.
while you're here. That way.
Yeah, actually, you do audiobooks, right? Audible.com. No, I'm kidding.
Just audio sex books.
Sex radio.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. That's our show. We appreciate you joining and listening. Be sure to rate us on iTunes, comments, send us emails. All of that will be in the show notes as well. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, wherever anything is. We'll probably try to be there. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Take care.
We don't have any affiliate links or any sort of advertising set up for the It's a Guy Thing podcast just yet. However, as members of the 210 Podcast Network, we'll just play their advertisements. This podcast episode is brought to you in part by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day trial at www.210localmusic.com/audible. We get a nice little bonus if you do, and you can cancel at any time. There are over 150,000 titles for you to choose from for your iPad, Kindle, Android, or MP3 player. You can visit us on our home on the web at www.itsaguythingpodcast.com, on Instagram and Facebook at It's a Guy Thing Podcast, and Twitter, It's a Guy Thing Pod. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, and we'll be coming soon to many other podcatchers. Thanks for listening.